Hello, my name is Grian and welcome back to another Minecraft video. Today I'm going to be showing you a bunch of house designs that fit inside one chunk. For those of you that don't know what one chunk is, it's basically a 16 by 16 area, which it looks kind of small, but you can fit a substantial amount of house inside here. So let's just dive straight into it, shall we? The first one is, I don't know what the theme would be, survival wooden house. You know, it's like a log cabin. And this is a real favorite of mine for this because of its simplicity. And what I'm going to do is basically just go over some of the design features of it and then give you a few of the dimensions in case you want to copy it. These builds are relatively small. They're not absolutely miniature, but at the same time, if you actually go inside, there's not an awful lot of space, so I would definitely mark these in the small category. So this is definitely achievable as a starter base. It's basically entirely made out of wood with a little bit of cobblestone thrown in there. Definitely achievable in your first few days of Minecraft. So what we've got here is one big feature balcony. So the whole house is actually sitting on 2 blocks of logs, which raises it off the ground, and then it's got a bit of cobblestone underneath. This is pretty much the most important part of this build. The house would still, of course, work if you placed it down a couple of blocks, but it would lose some of its charm, I think. So the first thing you would need to do if you were going to make this is make this balcony. And if you wanted to copy this exactly, that is 9 blocks. And from here to here, it's 5. From here to here, it's 5. And of course, the whole thing is 12. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of the dimensions if you wanted to work out how to make this. So the roof is held up by a bunch of fences and it goes up half a block at a time where it meets in the middle with a spruce staircase and works its way to the back. The back is just a simple log framework with a couple of trapdoors as decoration and a couple of glass panes in between. It's just a repeated pattern. It should be fairly easy to copy down. On the side here, we've got a large chimney that makes its way through the house, and it's got some very minor detailing. And we've got a couple of slabs and cobblestone walls to make that look a bit more rustic. And then on the front here, we've got a nice dormer that goes over the top in an A shape, with a couple of glass panes in between. The 3 woods used are oak, spruce, and even a little bit of dark oak planks, but of course you can just mix these up with whatever's available and whatever you like the most. The only other detailing is that there are some spruce stairs here instead of full block, and a couple of trap doors. On the inside, it's kind of up to you. It's a very small space in here, but there's enough for a few chests and a bit of decoration if you want. So overall, a very simple design, but pretty elegant at the same time. Let's move on to the next one, which is a medieval build. Now, this one is a little more daunting, but it's actually not as bad as it seems if you take it step by step. So let's take a look at this house in a bit more detail, ignoring all of the vegetation around and ignoring this little detail at the front. What we've got is a 3-part build. So if you separate this build into 3 parts, you have the cobblestone layer, I like to call it. This is the foundation made of rocks. And then you have the living quarters, which is surrounded by a log framework usually, and it's mixed in with some kind of white block, usually wool or white concrete or something. I've used white concrete powder because I think it looks a bit more clean. And then the roof at the top, which tends to be this sort of bell-shaped roof instead of the typical A-frame over there. So it actually goes up with staircases and then makes its way up to the top a little bit more steep. And we got a couple of dormers here with, again, this bell shape over the top. So let's take this a little bit more step by step. So what we've got here from corner to corner is 13 blocks, and they are in 3. So you have framework, 3 blocks, framework, 3 blocks, framework, 3 blocks. And then on the side, we've got framework 2, framework 2, framework 2, and then the same on the back. We then take our framework block, which is the oak, and then we make a slightly larger frame over the top. And the key part of this is the overhang over this part here. So wherever you've got a framework, you just pop a oak block out the front here. You can even detail it with a button, connect them up, and then you repeat the pattern, but a little bit taller with some windows and with some white concrete. It's actually fairly simple once you've got one pattern. All you need to nail is one of them, and then you can repeat it as long as you want the build. And then over this side, again, there's some extra details you can add, like these flower pots, But the difficult thing about this build is the roof. It's a little bit more challenging. So what I've done is just continued the framework up to the top here and built this across and added a bit more spruce in between. But to get this shape, you start off with the staircases going up. When you get about a quarter of the way, then you want to start heading upwards. So you go for a full block, then a staircase, then a full block, then a staircase. Then you should meet in the middle, and you can do a bit of decoration on the top. Then all you do is follow that with a different colored block. So I've used spruce here, and the trim is made out of stone bricks. Having a trim on a build makes the roof stand out a bit more. That goes for pretty much all of the builds that I'm going to show you. You can see the trim around the edge. It's really important. And the color that you choose, or the block that you choose, will kind of tell you what style you're going for. So stone brick really works well on a medieval build. So you then fill in all that, and then you can add some optional dormers here on the front. It's just a small framework and then the bell roof over the top. And I've added a chimney here as well, detailed with cobblestone walls and slabs. So that goes over most of that, but on the front here, I've actually added an extra thing because I thought it looked a little bit rectangular, and I had a big space in this chunk. I know this house looks massive, but it does fit in a 16 by 16 space, even if it does hang over the very limits of this chunk. So this area here is basically just a pig pen or an animal pen, and it's very simple. It's just a oak framework, and then it's got a stone brick slab roof that just goes steadily down, and then it's got that in the front. And then that actually really accompanies the build very, very well. So that is the medieval house. I don't think I've ever actually done a tutorial on my channel for medieval homes, so I actually probably could fill a gap if you guys want to see this in a bit more detail. So if you wanted a few more dimensions very quickly, that one goes up to 5. From this point to here is 10. Across here is 7. And across here is 13. And across here is 17. So if you work all those out, you should manage to make that fairly easily. Moving on, we've got the modern design. Now, I've done plenty of modern houses, and I've even done a video on how to make your own modern house. But I will go over the basic principles behind it. Making a modern house is a little bit like putting Jenga or Tetris together wrong. Okay, so you've got different parts of the build. You've basically got big blocks, such as this big white chunk here. You've got this big grey one here. And then you've got some here as well. So the basic idea is that there's no curvature in this build. It's all straight lines. It's very brutalist. And they all end up at different Y coordinates. And they're all overset from each other. So this one's one block back. This build would not look good if it was all completely flat. So you've got to make sure that they're separated by a few blocks in between. And they kind of overlap each other. Round the side here, we've got a very typical modern design shape, which it sort of starts off flat. It does like a reverse S shape. This is quite a common thing to do, but I've also added a balcony here. And one thing that's really good to use with modern houses, white concrete and then an oak of some kind. So a dark oak, spruce, tend to work really, really well in this situation because it just complements and contrasts really well. These colors are really quite essential for the modern design to work. Then at the back, we've got another cube here. You can see how all of these boxes just overlap with each other, and somehow it just works. That's a very, very modernist design. And then you can add some extra bits in here. I've added some quartz slabs just going all the way down. Plenty of windows, but don't overdo the windows. You can see I've only added one strip here and one strip here. It's better to have a balcony with an open space rather than a big, big window. You can then create artificial lawns by mixing in green concrete and grass or lime concrete in here to make it look like you've used a mower going backwards and forwards to make it seem like it's actually maintained. On the inside, there's quite a lot of space actually, considering we're only in a 16 by 16 space. You could fit quite a lot in here because although it looks from the outside that they all have their own interior walls, it is completely hollow on the inside. And I just realized I never showed you the inside of this one either. So yeah, this one's not that exciting. It's basically just a big rectangular box. And as you can see, it's not as big on the inside as it looks like it should be from the outside. So it's a very deceptively small house, despite looking quite large. So let's move on, shall we, to the Suburban House, another favourite on the Grian channel. I've done quite a few of these. So the same principles apply to this one as some of the others that we've already seen. For example, you'll notice that we've already got a trim. In the suburban house genre, using quartz is a really good idea because if you look at real life houses, they tend to have like that white plastic trim, and this is very reminiscent of that. So quartz, although very expensive and difficult to obtain, it really, really works with suburban houses, and along with stone brick, which looks a bit more like slate and a more realistic thing. So the chimney this time is made out of bricks, and it is just a very simple square that goes all the top, because you don't want to have, for example, the cobblestone one where it looks all higgledy-piggledy. It would pretty much be intact, so that's what I've gone for there. The block choice on this one is smooth sandstone, which has only arrived fairly recently and is a fantastic block because it's just so smooth and it really does represent suburban houses quite well. So let's talk about the shape a little bit. The key to a suburban house is a couple of these A-frame shapes. You could do one here, then maybe another. It would be very easy. So you need to overlap them, similar to the modern house design, but you overlap them ever so slightly, and you use multiple A-frames here. But the key is to not have them all facing the same way. Some of them should be facing this way. So by mixing the two together, you can usually get a fairly good shape. And then you add your windows in with minor detailing. On a suburban house, less is more, because if you look at suburban houses, they don't tend to have all of the details that we put in the medieval one. I think maybe that's why people do like medieval houses, because you can put a lot more detail into them. But there's something very charming about suburban houses, and they tend to have things like garages, which makes it look more realistic. So I'll give a quick look around this house, and then I'll give you some dimensions if you want to copy this down. So from here to here is 6 blocks, but to be honest with you, trying to copy something like this block for block is probably not the best way to learn how to make it. What I would suggest you do is take the tips that I've given you and try and build your own shape using maybe the same block palette and see what you can come up with, and try and highlight why yours looks very different to mine, or maybe it looks very similar and you've nailed it. So yeah, that's the suburban house. Let's take a look inside. It is very small in here, but again, these houses are on the small side. So let's move on to the last one, which is a treehouse. You can see I've tried to go for some fan favorites on showing these designs. So the last one is a treehouse. Now this tree is custom made. It is not a Minecraft tree, because making a treehouse in a Minecraft tree is pretty difficult given the size. And I want to use the full size of the chunk if possible. These guys just follow me absolutely everywhere. Yeah, I'm looking at you. So what I started off by doing was making the tree first. That is the absolute key to making a tree house, especially a custom made one. So this is what it looks like without any of the leaves. So you can see that I've built up the tree first, and then I added the house around it. Doing the leaves first and then trying to add in the house afterwards is a really bad way round of doing it. But once you've got the tree, then you add the house, you can then spam the leaves. And the key to making a tree look a bit more realistic is not having them end up being very flat and square. So that doesn't look very good. But if you remove some of these and have some of them like floating in the air, almost attached at a diagonal, it looks a lot more realistic. It looks like the leaves have really spread everywhere. So it needs to look very messy. An organized mess is how I would describe it. And with leaves, you can really kind of go to town on it. I've also got some leaves hanging down for effect, and for the house itself, it is actually a very, very simple box house. There's not an awful lot of skill that's gone into this. The size is 5 blocks by 6 blocks, and there's really not a lot of space inside this one at all. The only thing that's sort of unique about this is this platform here. So that's the main thing. If you're making a treehouse, you want to make a platform first, using usually a slab of some kind, and then you can make almost like a cookie or a sandwich or an Oreo of some kind, and then you add the spruce slabs over the top, and then you support it using oak fence, and then you add the house in the middle. But this actually has a roof. You can't really see it because of the tree, but there is a roof in there as well. But like I said, this house in the middle is actually pretty simple. There's really not a lot to it. There might be a bit of oak mixed in there, but for the most part, this is a very, very bog standard house. The main thing is that it's in a tree and it's in the platform sandwich, I guess we would call it. and it's all tucked in there nicely, and I think it actually looks really, really cool. Obviously, you can go bigger with the tree. You could add multiple layers, so you could add one here and then another up here. It's totally flexible, and you can really get some creativity flowing out of it. So those are my 5 one-chunk house designs that I wanted to show you today. Hopefully some of these have inspired you, and maybe you want to recreate some of them, so hopefully I've given you enough information that you would be able to do that. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please let me know which one was your favourite. And like I said, I've not done a medieval house tutorial. I quite enjoyed this. It was actually a challenge. I struggled to make this, but I think this one's probably my favourite, second favourite, third, fourth, fifth. What was your favourite? And let me know if you want to see more one chunk build inspiration. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.